Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj, and coming up in next hour. Israel targets Hezbollah intelligence headquarters in Beirut. 3 key officials killed in strike. Early voting begins in 26 of 50 US states. Both presidential candidates trade barbs over issues of economy and democracy. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurates R.J. Sankara Eye Hospital at Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh. Also attends a public gathering. And South Africa all set to face New Zealand in Dubai with an eye on historic T20 Women's Cricket World Cup trophy win. At least 70 projectiles were fired towards Israel from Lebanon within minutes, in fact, as tensions between Hezbollah and Israel escalated. Some of the rockets were intercepted. Hezbollah has been trading fire with Israel since the conflict between Israel and Hamas began in Gaza last October. Earlier, the Israeli Air Force has attacked Hezbollah's intelligence headquarters and an underground weapons workshop in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. The Israeli military said it also killed 3 Hezbollah militants in other strikes in southern Lebanon. The Israeli military issued an evacuation warning for civilians living near Beirut buildings it said were affiliated with Hezbollah. The strikes come a day after a drone attack on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's home. Netanyahu accused Hezbollah of trying to assassinate him. Israel Defense Forces released a newly declassified video that shows late Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and his family walking through a tunnel in an unknown location hours before the October 7 attacks. Sinwar, the mastermind of Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack on Israel, was killed on Wednesday in a gunfight with Israeli forces. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer showed support for his Israeli counterpart Benjamin Netanyahu after the deadly drone attack on Israeli Prime Minister. Both the leaders engaged in an afternoon telephonic conversation on Saturday, where Starmer said that he was alarmed to hear about the drone launched towards Netanyahu's residence. The two leaders further discussed the situation in the West Asia following the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Stressing on the importance of getting much more aid into Gaza, the leaders also noted about the opportunity presented by Sinwar's death to halt fighting and get the hostages out. Meanwhile, US Vice President Kamala Harris reiterated her call for a ceasefire in West Asia conflict. She added that it was important to seize the opportunity provided by killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar.
Fast forwarding to today with the killing of Sinwar, this creates an opening that I believe we must take full advantage of to dedicate ourselves to ending this war and bringing the hostages home. As it relates to the issues in the Middle East and in particular in that region, it has never been easy. But that doesn't mean we give up, okay? It is always going to be difficult. It does not mean we give up. We can't give up.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin reiterated U.S.'s stand for Israel to scale back some of its strikes in and around the Lebanese capital. He urged Israel to opt for negotiations.
I say the same thing that I said, about Gaza, and continue to say. The numbers of casualties civilian casualties have been far too high. We'd like to see Israel scale back on some of the strikes that it's taking, especially in and around Beirut. And we'd like to see things transition to some sort of negotiation that would allow civilians on both sides of the border to return to their homes. And that's the point that I'll continue to make with Minister Gallant. And I think yes, he does take on my input.
Meanwhile, the European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, at the G7 summit suggested that the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar by Israeli forces could create new opportunities for reaching a ceasefire, releasing hostages and pursuing a political solution.
In the Middle East, Lebanon is at that moment the most important and pressing issue. Certainly, after the killing of Yahya Sinwar, a new perspective is open, and we have to use it in order to reach a ceasefire, to release the remaining hostages, and to look for a political perspective.
Germany has arrested a Libyan man on suspicion of planning an attack on the Israeli embassy in Berlin. Authorities said that the suspect has links with the Islamic State. The suspect, identified as Omar A., was arrested from his home. Germany's Interior Minister Nancy Faeser has said that law enforcement were acting with the utmost vigilance to prevent any suspected Islamist, anti-Semitic and anti-Israel violence. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Elon Musk promises to give away $1 million each day. What's the story behind? Stay tuned, we'll tell you. Russian missile strikes injure 17 in central Ukrainian city. And polls open across Moldova as voters decide on EU membership in crucial referendum.
Swagat ahe to magnetic Maharashtra, the land of valor, dreams and wonders. A state that is a perfect blend of rich cultural heritage and modern cosmopolitan India. Its breathtaking beaches and luscious green Western Ghats are home to 4 UNESCO World Heritage Sites that attract innumerable tourists. Maharashtra is a state of vibrant cultures knitted together into a beautiful tapestry. Its people uphold a brave heart and a compassionate soul, a glimpse of which can be seen in the heartwarming stories of the land. Maharashtra is a leader in terms of agriculture, industrial production, trade and transport. From world-famous Nagpur oranges to world-class Nashik wines, from scenic expressways to the majestic sea link, the state is ready to take global center stage. Maharashtra's capital city Mumbai is also the financial and commercial capital of India. With headquarters of major corporate and financial institutions, including India's main stock exchanges, the city is a key driver of the service sector in India. Mumbai, the city of dreams, is also an art and entertainment capital and home to the Indian film industry, one of the largest in the world with a global fan following. Playing host to G20 meetings, Maharashtra and the city of Mumbai are ready to offer our guests an enriching glimpse of India's diversity, inclusive tradition and cultural richness.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Moving on, with US presidential elections just 17 days ahead, early voting has started taking place in 26 states and more are going to begin soon. Out of those 26 states who initiated early voting on Saturday, Detroit, Michigan joined in. Nevada also began the same on Saturday, whereas Georgia, Pennsylvania and others have already started it. In Nevada, people queued up at polling stations in an enthusiastic way. Las Vegas voters also joined and they raised their issues and expected that their candidate should win.
Donald Trump, and I think that he's the candidate that would, that is more likely to revive the economy, secure the border, make a real path to citizenship.
I just have to come out and vote for Kamala Harris, if that's okay to say. I just want peace, okay? I just want the values that she holds, okay, they're mine.
It's a big role. Nevada's kind of swing state. It goes back and forth. I think it's real important this year for me as a Republican. We need to swing it back to the red side.
Well, it's important to me to vote, and I always do early voting to make sure that I'm able to vote, because on voting day I have to work. So that's why early voting is important to me.
An interesting part of the early voting is that it gears up the localities. Even shopkeepers start to present their products in a way that enthuses voters for their respective candidates. A bakery owner started selling Trump and Harris cakes in Michigan. For 40 years, a bakery in the Detroit suburbs has been predicting the winner of the presidential election, selling blue and red chocolate chip cookies for Democrats and Republican voters respectively, with names of the candidates written on the top. Candidates too have geared up in big way and are giving razor edge to their attacks in rivals. In a rally at Detroit, Kamala Harris hyped up voters who are going for early voting. She told them not to lose chance. She urged especially the undecided voters by saying that Trump has no issues. She told voters that the former US president and her rival is hardly telling anything about how the economy will work or how he will generate employment. She accused Trump to be self-centric and talking about mythologies.
I keep talking about somebody needs to just watch his rallies if you're not really sure how to vote. Because he spends full time talking about himself and mythical characters. Hey, Detroit, are we ready? Because the power is with the people. God bless you. Thank you. I'll see you out there. Thank you all.
The Republican candidate Donald Trump too is not far behind in his attack on Kamala Harris. In his Pennsylvania rally, the former US president and Republican candidate invoked the memory of golf legend Arnold Palmer, guns and democracy. He said Kamala Harris is a threat to democracy.
Kamala Harris, who shouldn't be there, she's a threat to democracy. The way they took over, they call me a threat to democracy, right? She's a threat to democracy because she shouldn't even be the candidate. They should have picked a candidate fairly, not just given her because they want to be politically correct. And they went.
Former US President Barack Obama was greeted by a sea of supporters in Nevada on Saturday as he rallied for Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee. The campaign coincided with the start of early voting in Nevada. Former President Obama emphasized the importance of voting, acknowledging that this election will be a nail-biter.
We know this election is going to be tight. And it's going to be tight because a lot of Americans are still struggling. What I cannot understand is why anybody would think that Donald Trump will shake things up in a way that is good for you. Because there's absolutely no evidence that this man thinks about anybody but himself.
Obama also took aim at Donald Trump's behavior, suggesting that some men mistakenly view bullying and belittling others as a sign of strength.
And I've noticed this especially among some men who seem to think Trump's behavior of bullying people or putting them down is somehow a macho sign of strength. I'm telling you, that's not what real strength is. Never has been. Real strength's working hard. Real strength is carrying a heavy load without complaining. Real strength is about taking responsibility for your actions.
Billionaire Elon Musk has promised to give away $1 million each day randomly until November's presidential election to someone who signs his online petition supporting the US Constitution. The petition states, "The First and Second Amendments guarantee freedom of speech and the right to bear arms. By signing below, I am pledging my support for the First and Second Amendments." Musk wasted no time awarding a $1 million check to an attendee of his event in Pennsylvania aimed at rallying supporters behind Republican Donald Trump. The winner was a man named John Dreher. The money is the latest example of Musk using his extraordinary wealth to influence the tightly contested presidential race between Donald Trump and his Democratic rival Kamala Harris.
I have a surprise for you, which is that we're going to be awarding $1 million to randomly to people who have signed the petition every day from now until the election.
Elon Musk also urged people to vote during a town hall in Harrisburg in key swing state of Pennsylvania.
So a lot of it is, I think, convincing people who sometimes feel like the vote doesn't matter or it's all rigged or whatever, that actually the vote does matter. And if there's any election in their lifetime that they're going to vote, they should vote in this one. This one, it really is a big deal.
As the race to the White House heats up, DD India is on an election trail to the United States. Our correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh is in New York. He scans through some of the prominent newspapers and takes us through the latest developments in the electoral landscape of the United States.
We are next to the iconic Brooklyn Bridge in New York. It happens to be a sunny day. Let's scan through what's appearing in the prominent newspapers about the US elections. Let's begin with the Wall Street Journal first. It is talking about in a battleground state of Michigan, the state of Detroit is an issue in itself. Well, the context of it is that Donald Trump had likened the city in his speech, recent speech, to a developing nation, and he had said that the whole country, America, would land up as Detroit if Kamala Harris is elected as president. Now, Kamala Harris's team has spun that around to her advantage, saying that it is like Donald Trump versus Detroit, that he had disrespected the people and the culture of Detroit. Donald Trump's team, of course, says that his words were taken out of context by Kamala Harris and that his remarks were directed at Detroit's lingering high crime and poverty rates. So that's interesting tussle centered around the state of Michigan. Next, let's turn to the New York Times. It's talking about the manner in which the North Carolinians are considering who will help them rebuild as early voting begins. Thursday was the day of early voting to begin. In North Carolina, the context of it is also the cyclone Helene and the devastation that it caused, scarred by the extraordinary amounts of rain that unleashed deadly flooding. The article says the road-crushing mudslides last month, the people of Western North Carolina are heading into the voting booths with the question in mind, which candidates will best help rebuild their communities and the impact of the worst natural disasters in the recent U.S. history. Another article from the paper, it says Obama set to hit the trail alongside Harris next week. Former President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, the former First Lady, will in fact make their first campaign appearance alongside Vice President Kamala Harris as she seeks to woo the voters in the last-ditch effort really in Georgia and Michigan. And finally, we're looking at the New York Post. There's an interesting editorial article, looks at the U.S. elections from the context of foreign affairs. It says U.S. election has the EU paralyzed, but, and it sort of talks about the implications and all that is going on, especially in the context of the Ukraine conflict. It says that there is an odd sense of paralysis in Brussels, the capital of the European Union. Everyone is waiting for the US presidential elections to conclude and the confirmation hearing of new European Commission. So there is this sort of time gap with the new leadership to sort of take charge. It is going to be important for what's going on in Eastern Europe in particular as well. So those were some of the highlights and what has appeared in the newspapers here in New York talking about US elections. With camera person S. Jaishankar, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in New York.
With just short of 3 weeks left for the November 5th presidential election in the United States, both candidates, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, are going out to woo the voters of all hues. Women, Black voters, Latino Americans, Arab Americans, Indian Americans, among others. DD India's Amritpal Singh spoke to a cross-section of Indian Americans to gauge, in fact, their mood and explore what role they could play in November. Listen in.
When Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the US Congress in June last year, he made a point of referring to Vice President Kamala Harris and her Indian heritage.
There are millions here who have roots in India. Some of them sit proudly in this chamber. And there is one behind me who had made history.
He had said this, pointing to Harris, whose mother was born in India. Harris's heritage is a sign of the role the Indian community has come to play in American politics.
As we become successful, I think most people are beginning to recognize that we have so much to contribute. For a long time, being involved in the community, charity, and philanthropy was par for the course. But in the last decade, I've seen a significant level of engagement in politics.
Currently, there are about 5 Indian Americans in the US Congress and nearly 40 in state legislatures. Indian American voters themselves have the highest voting rates of any Asian American group. But the Indian Americans don't vote en bloc to a particular party. Like any other group, they have their own preferences.
Indian Americans have been organizing and mobilizing and helping get out the vote. Last weekend I was in Philadelphia. We were knocking doors and reaching out to everybody, and they have been big donors. A lot of huge enthusiasm has come out in support of Kamala Harris, her mom being from India.
In the current election, there used to be like mostly Democrats, Indians 70-80%, because we are naturally more socially liberal. Both Republicans and Democrats have started wooing our community also.
Indian Americans are now a growing political force.
Now we are finally, at least in pockets, becoming a community that can influence the outcomes. There are many cases where they are feeling threatened either by legislation that's coming in place or by some elements who are threatening their places of worship, their places of education, or even their homes. And they're realizing that unless they have a voice in policy making, it's very easy for someone to get victimized.
It's remarkable how the Indian American community has grown in terms of its political engagement and civic leadership. Though still small in numbers, this well-educated and relatively wealthy community is fast becoming a growing political force in American politics. With cameraman Sanjay Jaina, this is Amritpal Singh in Stanford, California.
Ukraine launched an overnight drone attack on a critical Russian explosives factory roughly 470 miles from the border. The target was a key facility driving Russia's military production. Russian authorities confirmed the drone incursion but insisted their defenses successfully thwarted the assault. The extent of damage remains unknown. In a separate incident, Moscow's defense ministry claimed to have intercepted 110 Ukrainian drones breaching Russian airspace, the largest aerial barrage in 2 weeks. Russian forces are fighting street-to-street battles with Ukrainian troops in the outskirts of the eastern Ukrainian town as Moscow's forces push to gain control over the whole of the Donbas region. The statement issued by G7 defense ministers after the summit also focused on support for Ukraine's NATO membership. The G7 defense ministers said that the major democracies support Ukraine's irreversible path to full Euro-Atlantic integration, including NATO membership. The statement also mentioned that G7 shall continue to provide assistance to Ukraine, including military assistance in the short and long term in its conflict with Russia. The summit was the first session in the history of G7 dedicated to defense in the ministerial meetings program. Italy holds the 2024 chair of the group, which also includes the US, Canada, Britain, France, Germany and Japan. Moldovans voted on Sunday in a presidential election in a referendum on joining the European Union. The elections are a test of the former Soviet republic's pro-European turn under incumbent President Maia Sandu. who is seeking a second term. Police made hundreds of arrests after discovering a massive vote-buying scheme, warning this week that up to a quarter of the ballots cast in the country of 2.6 million could be tainted by Russian cash. Sandu, who beat Moscow-backed incumbent in 2020, cut ties with Moscow and applied for Moldova to join the EU following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. She has repeatedly sounded the alarm about Russian efforts to interfere in the vote, a claim Moscow has rejected. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has summoned a cabinet meeting for Monday to address a court's rejection of government orders to detain a group of migrants in Albania. A Rome court on Friday ruled that 4 migrants in a reception facility in Albania had a right to be brought to Italy, dealing a blow to Meloni's plan to divert asylum seekers abroad. The migrants were taken to Albania earlier this week by an Italian Navy ship. They originally numbered 16, but 4 have already been brought to Italy for health reasons or because they were minors. The court said that 12 migrants in the new Albanian facility had to return to Italy because their countries of origin, Egypt and Bangladesh, could not be considered safe. At least one person lost their life in the Italian town of Pianoro on Sunday as severe flooding ravaged the area overnight. Torrential rains pounded northern Italian region of Emilia-Romagna, causing multiple rivers to burst their banks. The region has faced similar catastrophic events in past as well. According to firefighters in the central Emilia-Romagna region, the last 3 households had to be evacuated in Bologna province after a local river burst its banks. Regional authorities in central Tuscany declared a state of emergency for some areas of the region, such as coastal Livorno province, where at least 2,000 hectares of agricultural lands went underwater after 3 local rivers flooded. The National Civil Protection Department issued a red alert for some areas of central Emilia-Romagna and an orange alert for Veneto, Calabria, Puglia, Sicily and the rest of Emilia. In France, a vigil is held in the port city of Calais for 4-month-old baby who died after a boat attempting to cross the English Channel sank on October 17. During the ceremony, community activists unfurled a poster with the names of migrants who have perished trying to reach Britain. More than 600 people crossed the channel in small boats on Friday, the day after baby died on the journey, pushing the total for the year above 28,000. The baby's death was the 45th one reported by French Coast Guards so far this year. Moving on, Cuba restored power to nearly 1/5 of the island's people after the national grid collapsed twice in 24 hours, plunging millions of people into darkness. The electrical grid first failed around midday on Friday after one of the island's largest power plants shut down. The unprecedented nationwide blackout is the latest blow in the nation of 10 million, already suffering from dramatic shortages of food, medicine and fuel. Strong winds that began with Hurricane Milton last week had also complicated the island's ability to deliver scarce fuel from boats offshore to feed its power plants. Tired of the surmounting energy crisis, Cubans are out on road banging pots to protest blackouts. Protesters in the capital used rocks and a dumpster to block a street, hindering traffic as they banged pots to demand swift action to restore the power. Police later arrived to disband the protest and clear the road. In El Salvador, hundreds of members of the medical and educational sectors took to the streets to protest against budget cuts announced for 2025 by the government. The cutbacks announced by Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele include a freeze on the payment of salary incentive called the Escalafon and a decrease in the number of job openings. Workers complained about the government's allocation of public funds to other government projects and neglecting of sectors such as health and education. And still to come on DD News Hour. India-Oman conduct a joint naval exercise Nasim Al-Bahr off Goa coast. And striking machinists at Boeing to vote on a new contract proposal.
Today's episode was all about unique ideas that help us adapt to this new world where so much around us is changing.
We are forming communities to practice regenerative farming and learn how to control these problems naturally.
We have invested in a new battery park to stabilize it, and that makes it also easier for us to phase in renewables like wind and sun.
We're developing some AI tools which use imagery in our grow rooms. They can monitor them on a 24-hour basis, and they help us understand the prime time for picking so that we harvest those mushrooms at the perfect time of ripeness.
I have been using Ravichandran's vermicompost and have had good yields. Now I have used it for this 2-acre maize field. I'm planning to use it continuously. So far, the yield is good and the crops are doing well.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj, and a quick recap of the headlines. Israel targets Hezbollah intelligence headquarters in Beirut. 3 key officials killed in strike. Early voting begins in 26 of 50 US states. Both presidential candidates trade barbs over issues of economy and democracy. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurates R.J. Sankara Eye Hospital at Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh. Also attends a public gathering. And South Africa is all set to face New Zealand in Dubai with an eye on historic T20 Women's Cricket World Cup trophy win. Shifting focus to Asia Pacific, Indonesia's new president Prabowo Subianto sworn in his duties on Sunday. The new president promises to bring nation to a prominent position on global level. The world's 4th most populous nation welcomed its 8th president. He took the oath at Parliament to officially succeed outgoing leader Joko Widodo. Subianto has previously faced allegations of human rights abuses during Indonesia's military dictatorship. His popularity soared with younger voters, especially on social media like TikTok, after he picked Widodo's son as his running mate. Leaders and officials from 40 countries, including the United Kingdom, France, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Russia, South Korea, China, Australia, and several Southeast Asian nations attended the oath-taking ceremony. North Korea has slammed the new multilateral sanctions monitoring team led by United States was utterly unlawful and illegitimate. The United States, South Korea and Japan on October 16th announced the launch of a new multinational team to monitor the enforcement of sanctions against Pyongyang. This came after Russia and China thwarted monitoring activities at the United Nations. North Korean Foreign Minister criticized the team as Washington's misconduct of flouting the international order and as the most undisguised violation of North Korea's sovereignty. Floods in Bangladesh have destroyed an estimated 1.1 million metric tons of rice, according to data from the Agriculture Ministry, prompting the country to ramp up imports of the staple grain amid soaring food prices. Floods brought by heavy monsoon rains and torrential upstream runoffs struck the country in 2 major waves in August and October, claiming at least 75 lives and affecting millions, particularly in eastern and northern regions where crop damage has been the most severe. The Agriculture Ministry said this year's flooding has resulted in substantial loss of rice production. In response, the government is moving quickly to import 500,000 tons of rice and is expected to permit private sector imports soon. Well, let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Pope Francis created a new group of saints on Sunday, canonizing 14 individuals, including the martyrs of Damascus killed in Syria during the Ottoman Empire and symbols of Christian persecution. In the US state of Georgia, at least 7 people were killed after part of boat dock collapsed, sending at least 20 into the Atlantic waters off the coast. Search for the missing people is underway after the incident that happened during the celebration of Sepilo Island Titi tiny, in fact, Gulagichi community of black slave descendants. Protesters gathered in Martinique capital Fort-de-France against the high cost of living despite an agreement signed on lower food prices. The rally was organized in Stadium Car Park by Assembly for the Protection of Afro-Caribbean Peoples and Resources. Back home, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Varanasi city of North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh on Sunday. PM Modi inaugurated the R.J. Sankara Eye Hospital that aims to offer consultations and treatments for various eye conditions. PM inspected the facilities to be provided and also attended an exhibition organized at the hospital. He was accompanied by State Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath and Governor Anandiben Patel. During the visit to his parliamentary constituency, PM will lay the foundation stone of multiple development projects worth more than $725 million. Other projects include airports, sports and tourism-related initiatives. PM Modi addressed a public gathering in Varanasi after visiting the hospital. Upon his arrival on the stage, PM was facilitated. He was accompanied by Shankaracharya of the Kanchi Mutt that runs the RJ hospital. At the stage, PM also distributed spectacles to children. The hospital will benefit people of 20 districts of eastern Uttar Pradesh as well as those living in the border areas of Bihar, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. Addressing the gathering, PM highlighted the facilities made available to the people of Varanasi.
काशी की पहचान अनंत काल से धर्म और संस्कृति की राजधानी के रूप में रही है। अब काशी यूपी के पूर्वांचल के बड़े आरोग्य केंद्र, हेल्थ केयर हब के रूप में भी विख्यात हो रहा है। बीएचयू में ट्रॉमा सेंटर हो, सुपर स्पेशलिटी अस्पताल हो, दीनदयाल उपाध्याय अस्पताल और कबीर चौरा अस्पताल में सुविधाएं बढ़ाना हो, बुजुर्गों के लिए, सरकारी कर्मचारियों के लिए विशेष अस्पताल हो, मेडिकल कॉलेज हो, ऐसे अनेक कार्य काशी में बीते एक दशक में हुए हैं।
The ancient city of Varanasi in North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh has achieved international recognition for its outstanding contribution to road safety. At the World Congress 2024, the International Road Federation honored a non-governmental organization, Muskan Foundation for Road Safety. The NGO focuses on educating school children about road safety and promoting a culture of responsible transportation in the holy city. The Bharatiya Janata Party on Sunday released its first list of candidates for the upcoming Maharashtra Assembly election. Maharashtra's Deputy Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis and State BJP Chief Chandrasekhar Bawankule are among the 99 candidates named by the party. While Devendra Fadnavis will contest from Nagpur Southwest seat, Bawankule has been fielded from Kamti. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to visit Russia for the 16th BRICS Summit taking place in Kazan. The summit, themed Strengthening Multilateralism for Just Global Development and Security, will serve as a crucial platform for leaders to address key global challenges. During his visit, Prime Minister Modi is also expected to engage in bilateral meetings with his counterparts from BRICS member countries and invited leaders. More in the next report.
BRICS, an important grouping, brings together the major emerging economies from the world. This year, the 16th BRICS Summit is being held in Kazan, Russia. BRICS countries have been the main engines of global economic growth over the years. On Friday, Russian President Vladimir Putin highlighted similar points.
This year, the average rate of BRICS economic growth is projected at 4%. This is greater than both G7's growth rate, which is only 1.7%, and global growth rate, which is 3.2%. This is a forecast.
President Putin echoed Prime Minister Narendra Modi's stance on BRICS, that the grouping is not anti-Western, but rather non-Western.
BRICS never was meant to against anyone. The Indian Prime Minister put it aptly of late. He has said that BRICS is not an anti-Western group, it's just a non-Western group. The BRICS does not counterpose itself to anyone. It is a group of nations that work in concert and have shared values and shared goals of development and take each other's interests.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Russia from 22nd to 23rd October 2024 to attend this summit. This year's theme for the summit is Strengthening Multilateralism for Just Global Development and Security. Leaders are expected to discuss key global issues. Ahead of the summit, Russian President Vladimir Putin praised Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his efforts towards paving a solution to the Ukraine war.
Our mediation is wanted. We will gladly work with the colleagues. Same refers to our friends. In particular, I mean the Prime Minister Modi. While talking with His Excellency over the phone, each time he raises this matter and expresses his considerations, and we are grateful to him for that.
The association now includes 10 countries: Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates joined BRICS as new full members. BRICS Plus, as the organization has been informally called since its expansion, now accounts for 37.3% of world GDP. Siddharth Bharadwaj's report for DD India.
A Nobel laureate, Professor Paul Michael Romer, who is in India, has hailed the country's digital revolution, which was given a huge boost by Modi government in the last 10 years.
Well, this is what makes the digital revolution in India so interesting, is that it's been used by the government to actually provide benefits to all members of society. It hasn't just created benefits for the lucky few. And this, I think, is very different from most other countries around the world. So I think the success here in India is unique, and other countries can learn from it.
Romer also said that India's digital revolution story has become an example for the rest of the world.
I think one of the first things is that the other countries in the digital South should say to themselves, if India can do it, we can do it too. Countries need to have the confidence and the ambition to try something that hasn't been tried before, the way India did by creating the Aadhaar number. Other countries could copy and learn from India's experience, but they should also tell themselves, we don't have to depend on the rich countries. We may not even want to let the rich countries be the ones who are in charge, because they may not lead to the kinds of improvements in the quality of life that we really want for our citizens.
Professor Romer talked about how the digital revolution in the country has helped people across the nation, transcending the financial status of the people.
Let me go back to the perspective I had on growth in the very beginning. I was saying, starting in the early 1980s, growth can be faster. Technology can actually improve the quality of life. And I would point to what were then successes, like Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, and everyone told me, oh, Paul, those countries are so small that you can't really generalize from that. Then go ahead, 20 years, 15, 20 years, I would say, well, look, China has grown faster than any country in history. And they would say, oh, Paul, China's such a big country that you can't generalize from that. And it's like, well, come on, what is it? Is it helpful to be small, or is it helpful to be big? Or maybe size isn't what really matters. I think that's the answer. What matters is a country which has the capacity to decide what it wants to do and to go where it wants to go. And that's what India did with digital services. They decided how they wanted to do it. They did it, and they've succeeded hugely.
Romer also highlighted the importance of the government in pushing the digital revolution to every nook and corner of India, helping millions and making lives easier of the people.
I think the role of the government is pivotal, and this is the lesson from the Indian success. In the United States, in the West, we've generally had a much more hands-off, kind of laissez-faire market solution, and without the kind of cooperation between the government and the private sector, what we've seen in these other countries is that the digital revolution hasn't generated the benefits that it could have, that many of us first anticipated when these new technologies came on the scene. And this is not a new lesson. Think back to the amazing discovery of the airplane. We didn't get safe air travel because we said, oh, let's just let the market take care of air travel, air safety, or air traffic control. We had government leadership and government innovation, and government discovery about how to actually run something as complicated as an air traffic system safely and move people all over the world. So there was a time in the West where we knew how to use the government to create the conditions where then private airlines and other private operators could operate. But we've lost that insight in the digital world. We've just stayed back, and the countries that have succeeded, like India, have been ones where the government went back to that older tradition and said, well, let's do it again.
Now let's take a look at other stories making news. A loud explosion occurred near a CRPF school in New Delhi's Rohini on Sunday, prompting swift action by Delhi police, who evacuated the entire area and registered an FIR under Explosives Act. Several shops and structures near the explosion site were damaged, but no casualties or injuries have been reported so far. Currently, teams from the National Security Guard and CRPF are at the scene investigating the cause of the explosion. Based on intelligence inputs regarding an infiltration bid, a joint anti-infiltration operation was launched by Indian Army and the Jammu and Kashmir Police along the line of control in Baramulla's Uri. Troops spotted suspicious activity and challenged, which resulted in terrorists opening indiscriminate fire. Vigilant troops responded with effective fire. And still to come on TD India News Hour. India loses first of 3 test match series against New Zealand in Bengaluru. Kiwis take 1-0 lead. And Olympian Joshua Cheptegei clinches men's crown while EIU secures women's title at Delhi Half Marathon.
With the constantly changing geopolitical situation and growing challenges in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific, India is focusing on self-reliance and modernization.
We signed the contract for 31 Predator drones MQ-9B, out of which 16 will be for the land use and 15 for the sea use, and that is largely for the Navy. This capability certainly is a force multiplier in our effort to monitor our areas of interest. P-75 class of submarines, the last of which is likely to be delivered by end of the year. Then subsequent projects, that is P-75 India and P-76 are moving.
You're watching TD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. And updates from business world now. Striking machinists at Boeing will vote on a new contract proposal on Wednesday. The new proposal includes a 35% pay hike over 4 years. The latest offer includes a $7,000 ratification bonus, reinstated incentive plan and enhanced contributions to workers' 401k retirement plans, including a one-time $5,000 contribution plus up to 12% in employer contributions. Around 33,000 of Boeing's unionized West Coast workers, most in Washington state, have been on strike since September 13. The work stoppage has halted production of the plane maker's best-selling 737 MAX and its 767 and 777 wide bodies, putting added pressure on the company's already fragile finances. A US judge has granted tech giant Google permission to postpone allowing competing app stores to sell Android-powered handsets, while Google files an appeal against the ruling that would have gone precisely that. Federal Judge James Donato's decision spares Google from having to comply with an October 1 deadline to allow competitors' app shops to access its Android mobile operating system. Google has welcomed the temporarily pause while an appeals court considers a permanent block. You're watching DD News. Our time now for sport. And New Zealand defeated India by 8 wickets on the final day of rain-interrupted opening test on Sunday to take 1-0 lead in 3-match series. It was the touring side's first victory against India in the country since 1988. Black Caps chased down 107 and humbled the home side. After dismissing India for their worst home total of 46 and making 402 in reply, New Zealand bowled out Rohit Sharma's side for 462 in the second innings. Will Young and Rachin Ravindra remained calm under pressure after the loss of 2 early wickets to get the job done. Ravindra was named the player of the match, and this is New Zealand only their 3rd win on Indian soil since 1955. The second test begins on Thursday in Pune. All right, and DD correspondent Narayan Singh is joining us live for more. Narayan, like I always say, whenever India lose any of their match, the cricket fans in India are not happy because in India, it's not just a game, it's a religion. And today, they must be really disappointed, especially because of the first innings of Team India where they bundled out for mere 46. They played really well in the second innings but couldn't provide the lead which is required to the Black Caps, and hence they had to lose the match. How do you analyze this entire encounter and India's first innings especially, which is in headlines all over?
Siddharth, if you take a look at this match especially, it was very important for the WTC cycle, but we know that it's customary for the Indian cricket in the recent past to lose the first match and then again bounce back and win the series. In the starting of this year, we saw they played a 5-match series against England and they lost the first match against England in Hyderabad, and after that they bounced back and won the series 4-1. If you take a look in their in the Border Gavaskar Trophy, when they were bowled out for the historic low of 36 against Australia, and they lost the first match against Australia, and again they bounced back and won the series down under. So it's we can say that it's an eye-opener at the right time for the Indian team. From fans' perspective, okay, it's we can say that on a particular day any team can win, but the kind of resilience, the kind of fight back India also showed in this match too, from 46 to 462. It's a big, we can say, bounce back by the Indian team. They had the full control over the match, but after the departure of Rishabh Pant and Sarfaraz Khan, at that point of time, India were in complete control and cruise control. But after that, the KL Rahul especially could have done something extraordinary, could have been there for some time. Otherwise, the result would have been different. Also, we can say that some mistakes by the captain Rohit Sharma too. If you take a look in the first inning of the New Zealand's inning, at one point of time, they were 233 for 7. And at that point of time, Rohit Sharma should have brought his best bowler, Jasprit Bumrah, but he kept him away for a very long spell. So we know that what kind of bowler Jasprit Bumrah is against, especially against the tail-enders, not only tail-enders, but against any batsman, any batter. But these are the few mistakes, and apart from that, misreading the condition, misreading the pitch, that too also costed the Indian team. Siddharth.
Definitely, several decisions by the captain Rohit Sharma, cost perhaps this match. But then you have another match coming up in Pune, and definitely the cricket fans and everyone would hope that India will come out with flying colours. We leave it there. Thank you so much, Narayan, for your analysis. And South Africa is set to clash with New Zealand in the final of ICC Women's World Cup 2024. South Africa avenged their last year's defeat in Newlands with a convincing 8-wicket win over defending champions Australia in the first semi-final in Dubai. Meanwhile, New Zealand have reached the final after 14 years after defeating West Indies by 8 runs in a nail-biting semi-final in Sharjah on Friday. The Sophie Devine-led Kiwis will be looking to continue their momentum and lift the title when they face the Laura Woolward-led South Africans in Sunday's showdown. That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.